And we are live. Hello, my name is Intermezzo, and we are starting this stream up. And it's a stream about the discourse online. I need
Mhm.
to, and essentially, what the big reason why I'm concerned about why I'm talking about this on the stream is that I'm really concerned about essentially that even within the traditional atmosphere or the traditional network online, we have a lot of issues concerning essentially inhibitions to conversation. We have very difficult times with conversation, with people essentially talking, interrupting other people, with people bringing up random topics, with people really kind of interrupting good conversations. And I wanted to kind of have a stream about what we can do to kind of promote good conversations within the traditional interweb. So I am joined today by Andrew, and you can say hi,
And yeah, I'm Andrew.
and American Mick,
Hello, how's it going?
and Doughboy.
How you doing?
Yeah. So how about we just kind of, I know like this introduction has been incredibly vague and not very helpful to describe what we're talking about. So why don't we all describe a little bit of the social pathologies that we kind of see on the internet, on Discord, and in YouTube?
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Well, first thing that probably strikes me is that whenever we usually talk with someone who's usually outside of our community, like whenever we're talking to each other, it's usually we're always on the same page, we're always respectful. But whenever we're talking to someone outside of the community, like an atheist or someone who's somewhere who's conservative or liberal or centrist, they really they really tend to get into more dramatic things. They tend to be very disruptive, very dramatic about certain things. And I guess if you wanted to improve that, you could do maybe I don't know exactly how you would do that. Maybe start laying some ground rules, or maybe have a moderator. But that's as far as I can. That's as far as I can see it.
I think specifics would be kind of good. Like things that I really recall is that sometimes, when somebody joins on a Discord server, they'll immediately start talking about, like fascism or Ebola or something like that. That's very, 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 very esoteric, very, very radical, and it can turn people off who are not
We're not
familiar with
into
the
it.
traditional.
Yeah,
Is that what
of
you're trying to
course.
discuss?
I see what you're trying to say now. Yeah, okay. Now, when I was thinking it more as like with people who are somewhere on the same page as we are, but when it comes to normies or people who are different, think on a different level on us.
I would,
Obviously, you don't want to bring the doctrine of fascism into it. It's like, okay, now read this. And it's something like that, of course. But I mean, I guess you would do it with anyone. You start them off being respectful. You tell them, try to relate with them on a certain level of some sort. You don't want to get autistic or crap. I'm sorry. You don't want to be different about it. You don't want to go off on some tangent of some sort where they don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, agreed. So, Mick, what do you want to say about this topic? I know that you prepared quite a bit.
I mean, I've written things down just so because you actually provided a rubric unlike other streams I've been on, so I thought I would try to lay out my thoughts. I would say there's kind of what is it? There's definitely a quality of obsessiveness that comes with this sort of attitude. You kind of lock yourself into either certain topics to the point that if anyone doesn't know about them, you get you get kind of angry about it, and then you go, and then sometimes for people you go even like a little bit further, and your whole pathology is defined by an obsession over not just individual conversations and about certain topics that you're aware of and you want everyone to learn, but also sort of an obsessiveness about internet personas, that, and then you start to get unnecessarily I guess political in some sense. You view internet personalities and their ideas in a sort of political way, and that's not the way we're supposed to be viewing these things at all. And ultimately, it comes out as pretty embarrassing. If we're gonna examine this as both individual instances and also in a more broad sense, I guess.
Yeah. How about your thoughts, Andrew?
Okay, to sort of preface this, it's good to understand some background to how this came about. The original title for this was Defeating Internet Autism. So and everyone kind of knows what that means. It's kind of difficult to give a formal definition of it, but everyone can point to something and say there's the problem. Of course, we did it for, we decided to dress this up in a nice suit, so we're not just saying that all day, but essentially what we're talking about. And Mick does get to a kind of core idea about it, where you'll be in a lot of conversations, and this happens not just on the internet, but in a lot of daily life as well, or two people talking past each other. They're all arguing their own little pet ideology, and there's no communication going on, and they just keep going down into like further rabbit holes into these more niche topics that neither of them really know what the other person is talking about. Nothing really gets accomplished, and it sort of is exacerbated by the internet for about several reasons. It's sort of anonymous, and you're not in the room with the person. The dynamics change if the person can reach over and slap you. You're more attuned to sort of being an obnoxious jackass if they're able to just reach over and strangle you for being an idiot. Here, not so much. You can just talk over each other, scream at each other, and just say the most. You can just bloviate all day long. Nothing can be accomplished doing that. And the internet definitely seems to exacerbate that quite a bit.
Yeah, let's leave that for the where we think it comes from.
Yeah, that's sort of expanding on it further. But then, sort of the other side of it is definitely ego.
Yes.
I don't know if that is so much an internet thing per se. It might be exacerbated by it, or the symptoms of it might just be exacerbated by it a little bit. But you can see that just in normal conversation in day-to-day life, is everyone just can't tuck their egos behind their eyes and actually talk to the person. Instead, they're kind of just going right down to this call and response form of conversation. It's not a conversation anymore. It's just kind of one-line quips. No one's really talking with each other, and they can't have any humility and say, you might know something I don't, and I might know something you don't. Let's try to hash this out and first understand what the hell we're even talking about. Instead, it's an immediate knee-jerk reaction of, no, you're wrong, and you just start screaming at each other, and nothing's accomplished. And it's like, I'm trying to think of a good animal. It's like hyenas, just like they're screeching at each other, fighting over some carcass.
Right.
Like, you're going to be at each other's throat, and nothing's going to be accomplished here.
I think that's a good comparison. Yeah, that ego thing is what I was touching on in the second part of obsessiveness, where you become obsessed. It's not just ego; you become obsessive about ego and personas online, and you start to view it in like a political, as essentially like politics. Yeah, if we're gonna go by analogies, I'd say Kraut.
Oh yeah.
Well, it kind of reminds me, honestly, of like a sports team phenomenon where everybody always tries to brag about how their sports team is best. I mean, I don't think that most people really care. It feels to me like most people don't even really care about the conversation being had. They just want to win, whatever that means to them.
Yeah, it's like every time there's internet drama, I almost have to like read up on the background every single time because I just forget, and or there's details that I was not following because I don't really care so much. At least not anymore. I don't.
Actually, that would be a good example of what we're talking about, the whole blood sports and e-drama phenomenon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. So I think that kind of actually leads on to my second question, and that is, where's obviously this is not prevalent throughout. This phenomenon is not prevalent everywhere. It's not prevalent at least at the same level as it is everywhere. So, which forums, areas do you think is more prevalent, and where is it less prevalent? And what people? I think that some people tend to be more predisposed to this. And so, kind of like in general terms concerning the people, but what types of areas do we find this in, and where, is it people who are new to an environment? Is it people who are established in an environment, or how would you guys kind of describe this?
Let me put it this way. If I were to go into Excel, if I were to take a bunch of survey data and basically ratings of how anonymous a website is and how easy it is to post content on that website, and then I would take a bunch of ratings on how broken people think the discourse is, 10 being very high and 1 being very low. I would see a very high correlation between anonymity and ease of post. I think there's a good relationship between those two things in order for you to essentially find out this pathology that's going on. So that would include definitely include places like Twitter, any of the image boards, and Discord. Yeah.
And so it would be less than on Facebook, on CNN.
Yeah.
In real life.
Especially on Facebook, because even though it's very easy to post on Facebook, it's very hard to get your anonymity down, because your anonymity is, as we know through certain trials, that Facebook is not particularly in favor of anonymity. And then of course there's certain websites that there's a paywall, and you can find some broken discourse where there's places with a paywall, but it's much harder for people to get, let me put it this way. It's much harder for people to get their dopamine up when they start posting whatever they feel like is right, like I'm right, you're wrong. It's very hard to do that if the initial process of that is paying for something, because then you're actually doing something instead of, getting in there for free. Right.
Okay. So I think people brought up internet blood sports. Do you think that this is either an exacerbation of this, or do you think this is just an outlet for this?
It can kind of be both. It depends on who we're talking about. For the audience of it, I think it's a kind of more of an outlet. For the people running it, it's more like capitalizing on it. It's a kind of a very interesting phenomenon to kind of parse through. It might be a topic in and of itself, but I can remember sort of defining it as, just because of all the drama that comes out of it and just how pointless and a waste of energy. I remember calling it, it's blood sport. Blood sports is just the Lifetime television for weeaboo men.
I think we have to remember that when it comes to blood sports, none of those fights ever starts initially on the live stream. It always comes from somewhere like Twitter, almost always Twitter, and then sometimes Discord is brought in there, and then maybe some posts from an image board. Usually not the image boards, because it's much harder to have a back and forth where you actually can see the person. But Twitter and Discord, where there's actual usernames associated with it, then they bring it on there. And then of course it does get exacerbated, because now, unlike on Discord you can voice chat, but most of the time I feel like a lot of the worse the more worst fights are the ones that start out as a text back and forth. And then the energy and the emotions kind of build up from that text chat, and then it's just released on on a voice chat.
Well, the biggest ones weren't even done through text. There were always stuff about behind people's backs, where like the secret Discord servers trying to dig up doxes and trying to pay for dox, like things like that, where they're not even talking, and then it kind of gets out into the open. And it's sort of, it's not even talking to the person. It's sort of another form of this. And that's another sort of ego thing, where you're trying to go after this faceless, nameless person that has sort of slighted you in some way, and you're wasting your time and energy on the internet trying to hunt this person down and do something to them. And there isn't a kind of moment where you realize, what the hell am I doing with my life? I should just block the person and move on. It's sort of what Mick's getting at, is that kind of obsessive compulsive thing. Is it's starting to, like an example is sort of my rules for Discord is, if I think about you, if I'm in my car and I think about you and you're bothering me, I block you. If my time on Discord is starting to seep over into my day-to-day life, no, that's a problem. And then you just block them right then and there. The people that are getting into this is where it just consumes them. These nameless, faceless people they don't really know on the internet. And this little world here just devours them whole. And they're just sitting there at a laptop for who knows how many hours, obsessively looking stuff up and getting into these fights. And they can't escape it. So there's like this addictive component to it. But it's sort of fueled by their ego, because I mean, if you do something stupid and you're embarrassed, if you're faceless, it's just, okay, I'll shut up and move on and just go to a different circle. But it seldom seems to be that. You end up getting at each other's throats, typing furiously back at one another. And never have I ever seen that kind of behavior deliver anything good. Like, once all the dust is settled, all we found is we've dug our hole a little bit deeper.
We dug our hole a little deeper, and we're trying to hit each other with our shovels.
Yeah, you dug a slightly deeper grave for yourself.
How deep can we dig this grave, and who's going to be knocked out first?
Oh yeah, it's always a race to the bottom. No one ever comes out on top in those circumstances.
No.
Yeah. Everybody's a pig in the mud.
I will say that there's only one kind of person that doesn't end up digging themselves, but we'll get to that later on. Sorry, just a little preview.
Okay, so I think like for my next question is, do we have any because we've been kind of speaking a little bit vague, but obviously don't dox anyone, but does anybody have any specific examples that they would like to present?
Well, Trout is a pretty good one. Everyone knows about that.
Yeah.
Braving Ruin. What happened to him? People just couldn't. They couldn't engage with him. So what do? They dox him.
Yeah.
Dox him, shut him down. Yeah.
It's this, and again, it's whenever you don't have
obsessive.
It's insane. It's utterly insane.
It's obsessive. It's egotistical. In the end, it accomplishes nothing. It's kind of like it's almost like any kind of war or any kind of battlefront that's ever fought in the mountains. It's just like nothing is ever gained, and everyone just kind of dies. People die, and nothing's ever gained. and no one remembers where any of that stuff happened years later. It's like that.
Yeah. I think a couple of examples I can give. So one was, so there's this guy online who goes by the name Benedict XVI. And I know he tends to go up on ClearThread server quite a bit, and he likes to go advocate for liberalism. He's seeking converts to his cause, which for anybody who doesn't know what liberalism is, it's essentially libertarianism with a new name. So, and unfortunately, because of that, I kind of feel like it's going to suffer the same fate. Libertarianism, it's not going to become, I feel like it's getting just the converts from the libertarians, and it's not going to be able to sustain a large enough force. And I think it's prone to other issues. And this is essentially like the issues that Benedict, whenever he comes on to ClearTrads, is just that he kind of gets a lot of pushback because of that, because people kind of recognize that this ideology that he's purporting doesn't really have legs to stand on. It's kind of like a half-baked ideology. It's essentially libertarianism with a different name. However, he does often come up with some good points, and one of his good points is that people on our server, they don't really make an effort to really try to make change in the real world. They don't really try to build communities. They don't try to try to make friends. And effectively what he recommended was that, hey, that we need to kind of build groups. We kind of need to go out into the world if we really want ideas that we have and that we share, such as family values, such as religion, and such as good social and moral norms to be established. We need to go out into the world. And there was this one figure who was disagreeing with him, and I don't really understand why he was disagreeing with him. But it was just like the oddest conversation because, oh, go ahead.
Was he the one I started yelling at? I mean, I got fed up with the sort of pointless acrimony, and then I think you did cut in saying, like, you're arguing against me with a meme, and but by then we kind of cut off and we were able to get back on track. But are we talking about the same person? Because I mean, that's kind of the example of like the issue when Benedict comes in is mostly that everyone has a knee-jerk reaction to him, and he like those conversations are the prime example of two people talking to each other and refusing to understand. Everyone is arguing their own little pet philosophy and just waiting for gotcha moments instead of actually hearing the guy out.
Yeah. I mean, I personally go onto his servers and talk to him one-on-one a lot, and I'm more politically I'm a fascist, and he's a liberalist, and we compare and we argue, and he does bring up some good stuff, but in the end, his ideas are somewhat half-baked, but he is correct when he says we really need to get out in the world and start talking about this stuff and not on Discord.
I agree, but this is kind of like this guy who was talking about how it was a bad thing to go out into the world, and about how we just need to stick on the internet, and that's how we're going to change the world. It was kind of
we're going to save the West behind our laptops. That's great.
Exactly, but it's kind of like it's like, and he was so adamant about it, and I think it was just because of his knee-jerk reaction to Benedict XVI when he got on. That he just didn't really recognize that he was trying to argue to win. He was trying to argue to defeat the villain that came into the nest, and less about really, I think less about actual action.
Yeah. All right, so can I bring up? I'm going to bring up two examples. One which Andrews might build up on.
Oh, the man, the myth, the legend.
More about this. Yeah, and then the first one is essentially a very personal example because I was I was the one enacting the stupid pathological reaction. It does have pretty much everything that we've kind of been talking about, except for ego in a more personal sense, not so much in a persona sense, but in like a more personal real life sense. Essentially, this guy was, which I didn't like him very much because I thought he was. I already had bad taste with him, so that's like a Benedict XVI. Second, he pretty much denied something which I kind of hold a little bit dear, which is that I know, or at least I think I know, a lot of things about history, despite not really studying the subject. It's kind of a hobby of mine. I'm armchair historian, and this guy was pretty much denying that for the worst reason. He's like, you're not much of a history guy because you don't think that Pearl Harbor was an inside job. I shouldn't have engaged with that at all, and yet I did, and it just got me angry. And I
oh my god, I remember this. I think I was here for that.
I told him, no, you saw the aftermath of that because you blocked me afterwards. and I basically told him he should have killed himself.
Oh gosh,
it got very bad, and thankfully I was able to come back from that because I was just like, you know what? No, I really did act like a terrible, horrible person.
I need to stay on
regard, and I realized how stupid that was, and I've been in Darn it, I thought of a joke, and I'm not going to say it. I've basically been like at an Alcoholics Anonymous for this internet pathology. I've come back clean, as so to speak. So yeah, very personal experience. So I kind of have an idea of where all this comes from, just not to the extent of personalities like Kraut who care about their online persona. I don't so much that I have a channel with like a theme and everything, and I don't upload any videos there at all. I really don't care about that. But aside from that, I think I know a thing or two because I've gone through it. Now there's another guy. This guy is named the Straw Man, the man, the myth, the legend. I'm just gonna give a very broad idea of how he is, and Andrew's probably gonna go into specifics.
Yeah, I've got the Silmarillion of the Legacy of Straw Man right next to me.
I'm just going to give a very big overview. This is a guy who keeps coming back into the spotlight, or at least in the favor of internet personas who are much bigger than he is, over and over and over again. Particularly, and most influentially, under Naked Ape. And he ends up becoming this powerful and an influential person on like Discord servers, basically. And then we start bantering with him, and we see that he gets annoyed. So we continue bantering with him, and then he gets so pissed off that we all basically try cutting him off, and that only makes him even more mad because he's realizing he's losing some of his influence, and he retaliates in stupid ways, you know, because now he realizes that he doesn't have as much clout anymore, at least as far as the grander community goes. So he retaliates. And then pretty much all of his power collapses, and then moderators just kind of like, screw you, we're taking everything away from you. And somehow, despite the fact that it just, despite the fact it keeps happening, it goes over and over and over again.
Yeah, he's had a rise and fall in multiple places. Like I can remember it was on the Naked Ape server. He had a big tantrum getting in a fight with pretty much everyone because his mod powers were removed. And then I remember he went into another server that was sort of one of the other mods, and he was like a one-man raid. He was like there for about 2 hours, just constantly hitting the chat, constantly like spamming things. It was just like ban this person, ban that person, delete this server. And it was like an hour straight where it just was ceaseless. He was a one-man raid. It was amazing. He was later on got in some trouble with one of Kraut's internet scientists. He did something actually stupid, and then was trying to come back like he had a scalp. Like met JF, became a bootlicker for JF, and then he like I don't know. I think he called JF a cuck at some point because like I don't know, optics cuck or something. So he just keeps jumping around, and he's his own worst enemy. It seems so many people know who this guy is because he's so prevalent and so influential with just his stupidity and his behaviors.
It's kind of amazing.
I brought him into a server because we were talking about him once. It's like, no, you just got to meet this guy. Bring him in here. He was banned in about 5 minutes because he comes in. And the first thing he says, "Hey guys, have you heard about Trump giving money to Israel? He's cucking for the Jew, man." And he's just gone. Like he couldn't contain himself. He was gone immediately, and everyone just like lost patience with him.
I want to say he went through a similar song and dance on Braving Ruin server where he. I don't think he ever got mod.
He's definitely a manifestation of the kind of it's the ego and just the incapability to move beyond a niche. Like he can only talk about one thing, and he's only able to deal with one thing, and everyone just loses their patience with him because he just won't. Like he's just contained right there. Like another example of this was Blackjack. If he was around, would probably remember this. Some other server, I can't remember what it was, and there was a conversation with the guy that he was having, and I was sort of around for it. And they were agreeing, and I was like, this is what's going on, and this is why it's bad. Here's how it might be fixed. And Blackjack is nodding along, going, yep. And then just out of nowhere, he goes, have any of you read the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion? And then Blackjack, you can hear him just like put his hands like his face into the palms of his hands, going, "Oh no!" And then he starts going on to like all these obscure like documents that don't actually exist. And like that's where he's coming from. And then later on, he realized like that's the only thing the guy can talk about. Everything is seen through that lens. Anytime you bring up something to him, he's like, "Let me quickly check the protocol and learn an elders of Zion to see what it has to say about it." Like it's some weird Bible that he's constantly interpreting to. Like when you do that, you can't talk to the person anymore. It's like
no.
So they
dealing with a cyborg.
Yeah. So to move on a bit. So I think we discussed a lot of the ideas concerning what causes such poor discourse online. One thing that was actually brought up to me just a little bit was actually just like particularly in perhaps like streams or particularly in online on the Discord chat, is that because you're not facing the person and because there's a little bit of a time delay, it kind of you don't really get the same interaction with the other person that you would in real life.
Mm.
So like you don't get the same social cues. You start talking over people, and that kind of drives people. It makes people feel like their points are not taken seriously, and so then they kind of like up ramp what they're trying to say, and then they start talking about ridiculous things. I think also in the chat, some account also mentioned that that the board. So he said that Twitter accounts are worse than the boards because he was also mentioning the ego. So that ego to it as well.
Yeah. It's let's not ignore the boards, because the forum boards, because they're the guys that look for drama, and then that spills on over to the ego. Even though everything is anonymous.
I mean, you're probably not going to find much ego there because there's nothing really to flaunt. Everyone's
No. I mean that there's information that's posted on those things, and that spills over onto other websites. That's what I meant. So they do feed into it, but they're probably not. They're probably not an immediate cause. They're probably not an immediate cause of this kind of drama, because some people can read things like. Some people can read things like apparently Mr. Medicare online. I guess according to some docs, his actual last name is Seamus.
Seamus? He's Irish. He's a potato nigger.
It's not. Apparently, it's not real.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
But but these things are found out on those much more anonymous forums, and then they spill onto real life, and people react to them. But anyway, sorry. That's
okay.
Clarifying that, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, I guess we can move on to the next question. So, I kind of maybe this is a bit. So obviously, all of this ridiculous obsession and really this incapacity to really comprehend the ideas of others. Is this always a bad thing, or does it have any utility? And I think I don't really think it does.
I mean, sometimes it gives us a good laugh, but that really shouldn't be encouraged.
Very rare instances I can imagine. Like, I think the information about the whole Fury and the animal abuse stuff that recently Medicare has been dealing with came via Kiwi Farms. It's going through a bunch of reports and trying to connect the dots is kind of the obsessiveness that we're talking about. Very little, at least for the person involved, comes about that. We can say a good thing happened, is sort of an evil deed was named and it was linked to the person who did it.
Yeah.
But it's still, you are sitting at a computer going through tweets for who knows how many hours, compiling information, what we call internet Batman kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It is the kind of, that is pathological to a point. We wouldn't call that exactly healthy, but there is there is a little light at the end of that darkness that kind of comes about from it. Or like didn't 4chan at one point help the Russian military locate ISIS camps to bomb them?
I don't know.
I think there are some reports of that happening at some point.
No, that was the Syrian government or something.
Yeah.
Russians.
Yeah.
Some talk of stuff like that. Like those things can happen, but that's few and far between. From like that's a diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
And it's barely a diamond. So it can happen, but under very particular kind of circumstances, and it's so inconsistent. Like the motivation to do both those things is either we hate the people or this is just going to cause some trouble. We're kicking up dirt because they're sitting at their computer going, me sitting at a computer has gotten however many people killed by like a Tomahawk missile, or some guy is going to jail because I looked up his behavior with his illicit behavior with animals. Is they're not sitting there going, I'm doing this for the good of the world and good things are going to come about this. There is this, like, they're anti-heroes, and like I think the clearest sense of the word is the good that's being done is happening by accident.
Yeah.
Like they'll do that, and the next thing they'll do is like destroy some 4-year-old's life for saying something stupid on the internet because it's funny.
Yeah. I was basically going to say the same thing, is that this kind of energy from this pathology has brought down pervert, degenerate, scam. This is me literally reading off what I wrote. Pervert, degenerate, scammers, and other criminals who freely live on the internet. And most of the people that they bring down also probably have this pathology as well. So, it's kind of like, in a way, it's like fire fighting fire, except the fire isn't being welled by anyone. The fire itself is attacking each other. I will say, though, that it's I want to make a small note about this, because even though there is a lot of potential that can come from these people obsessively trying to find, like, basically bad people, more either bad in like in a legal sense, or they're just kind of jerk sense, or completely disgusting or degenerate sense. I have to make note that it would be stupid and wrong to use this energy for political matters, because it assumes that you can use it for focused and long-term goals. This kind of thing is almost ADD-ish, There's almost like an ADHD-ness to it, where the obsessiveness, it's not very long-term. It just depends on how much they feel like they're ready to be done with it, or if something else interests them. So it's impossible. So that's the short answer, is that you can't. And the longer answer is that you can't, and you probably shouldn't.
It's like you're sitting around waiting for the hurricane, and most of the town is destroyed, but like one house is, hey, I got rid of that tree I was going to pull out anyway. So there's a silver lining. It's kind of looking at that as it's chaotic. It's this chaotic mass, and then we can point to some good things here and there, but it's still like a tornado going through town, absolutely chaotic. No real purpose, direction. It's like this mass accelerator of absolute chaos that no one's going to be able to control. If you think it's on your side, no, it'll turn around at any moment for any reason, and you'll be thrown under the bus.
Yeah, it's what's that one science? What's that one like pseudoscience where it's like where you believe that using a disease can fight another disease? What's that called?
That's homeopathy.
Homeopathy. I would say that there is a kind of homeopathy that comes with it. It looks like a positive, but it ultimately probably isn't. And in fact, the only reason why it's even there is because of the disease itself.
Yeah.
I would say that the perfect example of that is Mr. Medicare, because if this kind of pathology did not exist online, he probably would not exist either. In a way, he's completely useless without this kind of pathology existing online. But because it's there, and so long as it's enough to entertain him, he'll make videos about it and he'll talk about it. So
yeah,
that is like, yeah. The only silver lining for the rest of us really mostly is entertainment, and even then we shouldn't really be enjoying it at all.
So this kind of the big thing that really made me try to make this stream was especially like the Benedict the 16th and his discussion with, the person who didn't want to do anything in real life. And my question to the group is, do you think that this, this internet pathology, do you think it leaks into real life?
Are we going to talk about like what causes it? Did we skip over that?
We discussed it a little. So the reason why I kind of skipped over it was just because we were kind of discussing it throughout.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any additions to make? We can.
I just wanted to say that it might come from like, essentially, it just comes from people who are very ideologically motivated from something, and they aren't really getting anywhere in life. Either they're just kind of stuck where they are, or like bored, or even they're just complete failures, because the real life is like real world. It's complicated. Everything's kind of already structured without your input, and everything is also kind of slow.
Yeah.
Despite what the news might make you want to think. And then you come to the internet. It's all fast, chaotic, spontaneous. And people who end up feeling so ideologically unfulfilled by society's constraints, it kind of makes sense that people would become so obsessive and insistent and egotistical about their presence online and their ideas, and not want to really engage, because they just want to see themselves succeed. And it's basically like hoping you can win the lottery, It's like that person who comes with the last of their life savings, which is about $10,000, and hoping that they make the black on what's it called? What's that one? On the roulette table at Vegas, It's almost like that. They want the fast, they see that, the internet is indeed fast, chaotic, and spontaneous, but it's basically all luck based,
I think a part. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, basically, they just want to feel like they're in some way influential in this online world, because the real world is just kind of unforgiving. And I think that kind of goes along with that reversion to getting back to where we were. That kind of goes along with that reversion to not want to engage in reality, because it's just kind of like, well, we're making headway on a Discord server. Real life is not particularly favorable to that, so why even bother?
Yeah.
And I don't think even some people have come to that conclusion. That guy who shot up the synagogue, I have a feeling that he didn't put that together.
God damn it, man! Don't fucking take my memes. I wanted to say something on that to help us tail dove into the next topic.
Okay.
Because that's kind of like the overflow of it into real life. In part, it's sort of the nature of the internet, and what you can do here is, because it's faceless, no one here can reach out and just strangle you for being an idiot. So people like to kind of let loose in sort of, especially in certain circles, like the alt-right circles, definitely operate in this fashion where it's a kind of joke, and the discourse is kind of about saying the most offensive things you can say. What is the thing that you are not allowed to say in society? What is the most taboo thing you can break right here, right now? And
right
so
now?
that's why they'll be able to, sort of like our servers have the same kind of thing, where if you took everyone at their word and took everyone literally, you would think you were in some weird kind of terrorist cell. And that they're planning the downfall of America if you took what everyone said literally. So you have to kind of you have this sort of, these things are pose in some regard, where someone says something that's like, that's crazy, and you think they're joking, but because of the nature of the internet, some of them aren't. But because of the deep irony where everyone's talking like they're crazy, and it's just it's like a general kind of like point that no, we're not. Then when someone who's actually crazy comes in, you just think, they're really living the LARP here. And then the guy goes up and says, "Screw your optics, I'm going in," and everyone goes like, he's just being funny. And then suddenly, there's a shooting, and no one saw it coming, because you can go to almost several different servers. Any one of them could be serious, and I can't tell anymore. So sort of that's one of the factors that helps us dovetail into it like an overflow. Because I would say the recent Pittsburgh shooting is kind of an overflow of that, where it does look like a guy was just driven crazy on the internet, got really obsessive about this kind of stuff, and then there was it was overflowing. He wasn't just online being crazy, he was looking around him, and then like the whole internet life was starting to consume him. It's sort of like the same thing that I was talking about before, where it's drama, but now this is a little bit broader, where it's now a worldview emanating from the online world consumes him, and then he tries to take it to the outside world because he just loses his mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
That's
that
like the darkest and worst possible way, sort of end point for this.
Yeah, you basically have two reactions. You have that guy, and then you have the hide your power level kind of guy, who refuses to let it spill into the real world because they don't think that that they can make headway at all, and they're probably right in some cases.
But even that is kind of a disordering of things, is you're putting the online world ahead of your real life, or the stuff that's immediately tangible to you. And this was kind of what the disagreement, like Johannes keeps going back to, of the guy that doesn't want to do anything and just stay online, is you can sit here and stew your whole life worrying about academia in like this big picture, the stuff you can never touch, and you go out in the world and that's all you worry about when like your own neighborhood is collapsing around you. And it's like that's kind of a disordered way to deal with the world, is you're looking so far beyond the trees you end up walking into them. And that's kind of what's going on with sort of that idea of hiding your power level, is a lot of those things don't really affect you, not immediately. It's a who cares. You're driving yourself with all these different, conspiracies and world-changing events and all that kind of stuff, and you're just driving yourself up a wall doing that. You can live a far happier life if you just forego whatever is happening in Washington around the world and try to focus on the things immediately around you, the tangible things, instead of constantly worrying about these things you'll never be able to touch, things you'll never be able to affect. So that's a part of it, where it's the same kind of it consumes you, and you start walking around day to day, and you almost ignore the people around you, the people that who you should be worried about, like the neighbors that you have, the people in your community, and you just disregard them, and you're just consumed by this grand narrative and this huge big picture that's driving you insane.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
There are a couple of other reactions now that I think about it. I did write one down. One is another way it spills into the real world is it just somehow gets a hold of sensationalist journalism, and they run a story with that, and it becomes entertainment for people who are completely unaware this is all going on, or instead of the person who actively tries to change something, they now feel that their online life is disturbed because now their online life is crept into their real life, and either they go into complete isolation or they throw themselves in front of a train, like Terry A. Davis. So, yeah.
I think another example of this would be the Unite the Right rallies, where you could describe both of those events as just these people don't realize they're not on the internet anymore.
Oh yeah. And you know what's even worse is that you have people who I saw this, like, this was before Charlottesville, right before Charlottesville, and they were all talking about, we're going to have another torch night in December. I'm just like, are you guys idiots?
Oh gosh.
I remember seeing that. I'm just like, are you guys this stupid?
Well, y'all right is sure not optics cucks. Good night.
Yeah, but also, like, I see the same, like, with all, like, now that you said it, I see like the same pathology infecting like the newspapers, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh goodness gracious. Yeah. Anyway, should we move on to our topic?
So our next question is, so what can we do to avoid, becoming, monsters ourselves, and how do we promote better conversations online in particular, and also in the public, I would say, as well?
Okay, I'd say in a very broad sense, maybe we should take it upon ourselves to just, if we see this stuff happening, or, we could be like Mauritian, who is doing, what is he doing? He's going to do streams about personal financing. He's going to start doing stuff like that. So, like, that's part of what, like, promote more, if people seem like they're focusing so much on the internet, tell them to go outside, get some help, stop it, get some help. Or if you produce content, like actually help them talk about, like, kind of realize that there is a world out there, and that you kind of need to take care of yourself, not just going outside and getting groceries, going to the local grocery store, getting your nuggies, and then mumbling to the grocer. That's not interacting with the real world. Goodness gracious. Actually try to get some help focusing on the real world.
We are kind of getting dangerously close to boomer territories. We are kind of in effect saying, put down the phone, put down the internet, read a book, go out into the world.
Okay,
but it's kind of sad that, like, it's correct, and there's no getting around that. This stuff can really screw up your head, and you will end up doing stupid things if you let it consume you.
Yeah, even if your life's gonna end up sucking, just focus on that, please. Yeah. That doesn't mean let go of everything, Yeah, but there's a couple of other things. If you see stuff like this, like personally, if it's possible, don't let it get out of hand. And even if it seems like it's going to get really funny, don't let it get out of hand. That is a big temptation to just let it, burn because it's going to be funny. Mm-hmm. This is a very small point, but if you're going to talk about anything online, if you're going to try to be serious about something, like actually be serious. And one of those things is, actually try to stop swearing, because swearing makes things more, it kind of decreases the power of the conversation and turns everything more into a farce. Like that's something that actively happens. Like that's why a lot of atheists would usually swear whenever they talk about theists. At least this is what was it? One of Distribute's videos where he's talking about vernaculus. He's just like, yeah, the swearing's just kind of trying to make the stuff look obvious, or what's it called? Like it's not even worthy of conversation, Mm-hmm. Like it's stupid, it's yeah. So if you're actually going to be serious, don't swear, And then I'm gonna go. This is kind of like don't let it get out of hand stuff. If you see it, even if you think it's funny, I just cannot emphasize enough that most of the time, if someone's trying to confront you with this stuff, or if you see two other people trying to confront it, if you can't stop it, for the love of all that is good, just try to ignore it. All right, seriously. There are some people that will willingly like throw their heads at a brick wall just so they could feel like they got something done. Don't even give them the brick wall. Just let them keep running until they tire themselves out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I think a couple good ideas I have. So first of all, I think you're less prone to social pathologies online if you actually have a friend or social structure outside of online. Mm-hmm. Because then you don't have to worry about the ego problems as much. You have a support system outside. And I think also, for people who are kind of more leaders in the community, or for people who view themselves as leaders in the community, I think closer moderation can be helpful as well. Mm-hmm. So,
anyone else want to have anything?
Yeah, sort of getting back to the point of just discussions at all and trying to have them be productive. I got distracted for a second. I'll have to reconstruct my ideas really quickly. I guess sort of going back through some of my history, when I first got into this, I'm very new to the internet, like only about maybe a year or two. And I sort of got into things bright-eyed, kind of like a grade school teacher at the beginning of the year thinks everything's going to be great. And then slowly that hope is crushed. Or I come in and I try to be straight with people, try to be serious, and try to have productive conversations, and then they do nothing but meme at you, and it's nothing but irony. And it took a while to learn to speak that language, and that's kind of one of the things that does get in the way, is the kind of the irony and the inability to, even when you're trying to be serious, act like it and try to get by it. Like, people want to actually have the serious conversation, but they certainly don't act like it. They keep falling into the same kind of traps of talking past each other, and it becomes after a while sort of depressing, or you get a defeatist kind of attitude where you think that nothing's ever going to come of this because of how people act and sort of the nature of how the internet functions. Is everyone's going to keep being ironic, and no matter how serious the topic is or how serious they are about it, they seem unable to act like it's serious. And sort of,
Yeah.
I mean, the only way I can really call it is sort of that irony, is you have a very difficult time telling when people are serious or seriously talking about things. Because sometimes they'll be pretty, like a pretty palatable or mediocre kind of position, but they'll play it up in such a way, and you have a hard time understanding what they're doing. Like, the best example that we have of this is Chroma. We don't know what he thinks, but we still kind of take him seriously. But he keeps doing this weird kind of dod, and I've heard it discussed, and I kind of hold this to be true with if you want to have a serious discussion on the internet, you have to do this with anyone. Is people are like toddlers. You have to run them around a bunch and tire them out, and then they'll like finally sit down and eat their dinner and do something serious. And then, like in Chroma's face, he'll say something that he actually believes, and then he'll meme on you just to confuse you. But it seems like you have to run the ringer with people for a couple of hours and like develop a bond with them and tire them out. You got to play their game for a while, and then you start having a heart-to-heart.
They're like a puppy dog.
Yeah.
You need to go tire them out all day before they're able to.
Yeah, they are a toddler. You have to tucker them out before you can get them to do their homework.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be so much easier if we did this offline in the real world.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think that's one of the importance of trying to get to know people. You know, I think it might be a good idea if people try to go meet up with people that they met online and actually saw them in person, and that they'd probably, you know, if you know somebody personally, it's far more easy to actually take, you know, see them as a human being and not as simply like essentially online robots that you compete against. You know, it's a person that you actually see, and a person who's obviously much more complex than any caricature of an online personality that you can devise for that person.
Yeah, and if you want to take things seriously, it'd be better if you're able to get some kind of connection with people that you know online and start a project like the whole Via Obscura thing Dave's doing. Is that would be like one kind of vehicle for it, or like some sort of a charitable organization to start. Something that's real and tangible, that you both have an investment in, that has real world applications, that you both put your blood and sweat into, and then you have to work with each other to keep that going. And that has actual productive value, and you're actually able to take that person seriously, and you take yourself seriously, because it starts moving out of the no effect world of the internet, where no matter what we do here, really nothing changes, and we're actually kind of surprised when things actually change or when something happens. So it's trying to move things out of this kind of closed system and bring all of our sort of frustrations and all the stuff that we come here to complain and moan about all day, and like, okay, let's actually go out and do something, and let's try to build relationships here, because we're all driving ourselves insane sitting here all day.
If we actually engage with the real world, we could finally have that stupid internet political state that we've always wanted.
And gamers rise up.
Yeah, gamer state. Yeah, the Duchy of Gamers. Yeah, we'll finally have that. I'm being hyperbolic, of course. Sorry.
Yeah. So, well, I think the stream has gone on for about an hour, and so how about we go start establishing concluding remarks? So, does anybody want to lead?
I mean, I'm just going to make mine short. If you kind of think that you identify with this pathology, don't be complacent in it. Like we called it internet autism to begin with, but that's not. Don't think of it as that way, because that implies that you can't control it. You can control it. So don't identify with it if you feel like you're in that thing, and if you don't think you're kind of in that sort of pathology, really try to discourage it. And it doesn't mean be a stick in the mud and never be ironic meme lord ever. You know, that just means if you see that kind of attitude online, actually just try to actually discourage it. Make Mr. Medicare unnecessary. This is another way of putting it. But anyway, that's my marks. Yeah. Someone else can go.
Don't focus so much on the internet. Start focusing a lot more on your tangible lives, of course. And if you really take all these ideas seriously, well, go read a book. Go try to learn something, and go find someone who can identify with this, so you aren't ironically siege posting all the time.
Yeah. Tell yourself a meme so many times that you actually start to believe it. Avoid that. Sorry.
You have any concluding remarks, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm trying to come to a concise formulation of it. I guess I would say what we're essentially talking about is, in a sense, a pathology, and it's like a psychological pathology. Is a kind of mental disconnect with yourself, where you come here to kind of avoid society and talk about things that you think are serious, and you will attest that these things are serious. But then through your actions, you behave like they're not. Hold on a second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I would just like to state, just be careful of what you say online. Be careful not to get into silly discussions, and try to envision yourself talking to a real person, a real person in front of you. And I think the best way to kind of practice that is to really meet people in real life, develop friendships in real life, so that you don't have to worry about your ego online, and so that you kind of have, so how do I say it? I guess so that your online persona isn't such a core identity that you have to feel like you have to defend all the time. I think that's one of the most important things that we can perhaps all agree on. So
Right.
I think that's good for a stream. So I would like to go thank Andrew, American, and Doughboy for joining me on the stream. And to everybody, have a good night. Thank you very much for listening.
Mm-hmm.